What up? Welcome back to the channel, and thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you like the video. If you don't like the video, leave a comment and let me know why. The game this week is a good one, and as always, we're playing with some cool people, so a big thanks to Ashley, Fate, and Will for letting me record this game of Commander. Ashley actually has her own channel called MTG, which I'll be shouting out in the video later on, so look out for that. Getting everyone's schedule to align for recording games can be pretty difficult, so if you'd like to hop in the game or just chat it up, come on, hop over into the Spell Table Splits Discord server, it'll be linked below. Now starting us off, we have me. I'll be playing a slightly upgraded Warhammer 40k precon, with Imotekh the Stormlord as my commander. I'll be trying to pull off some artifact graveyard shenanigans. The list I'm playing is only 10 cards different from the precon. My starting 7 has 3 Swamps, a Chronomancer, a Thought Vessel, a Necron Deathmark, and a Resurrection Orb. Next, we have Ashley. She's playing her Elenda, the Dusk Rose deck. It's an aristocrat deck focusing on sacrificing creatures to make Elenda big, so she can sacrifice Elenda to make more creatures to then sacrifice. Her starting 7 has a Snow-Covered Plains, a Command Tower, a Fabled Passage, a Castle Ardenvale, a Concealed Courtyard, and a Mavrin Fanedusk Apostate. Oh, she also has a Skemfar Shadow Sage. Fate is going to be playing his Mazzy Oral Tribal, trying to generate value through auras and pumping Mazzy up for massive commander damage swings. He's starting with a Sunpetal Grove, a Mountain, a Faith Unbroken, a Soul Tithe, an Instill Energy, a Cultivate, and an Ancestral Mask. Lastly, Will is playing his Queen Marchesa deck. I like to call it Trying to Find Out Special. It's filled with interaction and tons of answers for the board. He's trying to close out the game by letting his opponents kill each other, leaving him to clean up the remnants of the fight that he started. His starting 7 has a Swamp, a Plains, a Mountain, a Backlash, a Supernatural Stamina, Brina the Demagogue, and Carter Doomscourge. Now I'm gonna get on up out of here and let the gameplay happen. Peace. I'm gonna start with a Swamp and I'll pass the turn over to Ashley. She's gonna play a Concealed Courtyard and pass the turn. Fate plays a Sunpetal Grove tapped and pass. Will's gonna start with a Caves of Koilos as his land drop and pass it to me. I'll play another Swampy Swamp. Then I'll go ahead and cast Thought Vessel before passing it to Ash. Ashley plays a Plains and passes it to Fate. Some would say we're having a good clean game of Commander. Fate is gonna drop a Mountain and then ship it to Will. Will liked Fate's Mountain, so he does the same and passes it to me. I'll put another Swamp into play, and then I'm going to cast one of my favorite cards in the precon, Resurrection Orb, which is an equipment that gives the equipped creature lifelink, and whenever it dies, I return the equipped creature to the battlefield under its owner's control, at the beginning of the next end step. With my other 2 mana, I'll cast Chronomancer. It's an artifact creature that lets me pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice another artifact to draw a card. It also has Unearth for 2 and a black. I'll pass the turn to Ashley after that. Ashley plays a Command Tower, she'll fix her mana, and then tap out to cast Mavrin Fanedusk Apostle. This vampire allows Ashley to create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink whenever she attacks with 1 or more non-token vampires. After that, she'll pass the turn. Fate doesn't draw into a land and unfortunately is forced to discard and pass it over to Will. Will is going to start his turn by playing a Plains as his land for turn. Then he'll tap out and cast Brina the Demagogue. Brina is a 1/3 creature with flying, and whenever a player attacks one of his opponents, if that opponent has more life than another one of his opponents, the attacking player draws a card and he gets to put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature he controls. He'll pass the turn my way after that. I'm gonna play another Swamp. From there, I'll tap out to cast Gilded Lotus. It's a 5 mana value rock that taps for 3 colored mana. I'll move to combat and attack Ashley for 1 damage, accidentally gaining 1 life for some reason, but I'll catch that extra life later and I'll remove it. I give the turn to Ashley from there. Ashley plays a Castle Ardenvale, which comes in untapped because she controls a Plains. Then out comes our commander, Elenda the Dusk Rose. Elenda has lifelink, and whenever another creature dies, she puts a +1/+1 counter on Elenda. When Elenda dies, she gets to create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Elenda's power. Ashley moves to combat and attacks Fate with her Mavrin Fanedusk Apostle, creating a 1/1 vampire from its trigger. This attack triggers Will's Brina, so Ashley draws a card, and Will puts 2 +1/+1 counters on Brina. Ashley passes the turn from there. Fate plays a plains, and then he'll cast Cultivate, grabbing a plains and a forest. The plains will come into play tapped and the forest will go to his hand. He'll kick it over to Will after that. Will plays a swamp, and then he'll move to combat and send Brina my way, and with her trigger, he'll add 2 more counters to her and draw a card. I have no blocks, so I'll munch the 5 damage. After that, he'll cast Carter Doomscourge, which on ETB until his next turn, all creatures his opponents control are goated, and whenever an attacking creature dies, we all lose 1 life and he gains 1 life. With nothing left to do, he'll pass it to me. I'll play a swamp, and then out comes my commander, Imotekh the Stormlord. Whenever 1 or more artifact creature cards leave my graveyard, I can create 2 2/2 black Necron warrior artifact creatures, and at the beginning of combat on my turn, I can give another artifact creature I control +2/+2 and Menache until the end of turn. I'll move to combat and send my Chronomancer at Ashley, giving it Menace and +2/+2. This triggers Brina, so Will puts 2 counters on Carter, I'll pass the turn to Ashley and draw from the Brina trigger. Ashley plays a Fabled Passage, which she'll crack to grab a swamp and put it into play. She casts a Viscera Seer, allowing her to sacrifice a creature to scry 1. She'll move to combat and send her lifelinking token at me for 1 damage. Then she sends her other 2 creatures at Fate for a total of 3 damage. I respond to the Maverick Fane trigger on the stack and cast Necron Deathmark, which on ETB allows me to destroy up to 1 target creature and have target player mill 3 cards. I choose to destroy Viscera Seer and have myself mill 3 cards. Ashley creates her token from the Maverick trigger. This attack also triggers Will's Brina, so Brina will get another 2 counters and Ashley draws a card. Ashley responds to my targeting of her Viscera Seer by sacrificing her tokens to it and scrying. She'll put 2 counters on Elenda because 2 creatures died. Then, Viscera Seer will die, putting another counter on Elenda. Now I know there was a misplay here due to timing and how the stack works. One of the sacrifice tokens wouldn't have been in play yet to be sacrificed by the Viscera Seer. But this doesn't impact the game at all, so let's move on past that. Then I'll finish the resolution of my spell by milling 3 cards. With the stack finally clear, Ashley casts Star Compass, which is a mana rock that comes into play tapped and taps for any color of mana that a basic land she controls could produce. She'll then pass the turn of Fate after that. I should mention that because an attacking creature died, we all lost 1 life and Will gained 1 life. But instead, I'll lose 2 because this is where I realized that I had 1 more life than I should have. Fate plays a forest, and then his commander, Mazzy True Sword Paladin, will make an appearance, so whenever an enchanted creature attacks one of his opponents, it gets +2, +0, and trample until the end of turn. Also, whenever an aura he controls is put into his graveyard from the battlefield, he exiles it and can cast it until the end of his next turn. After that, he'll cast Instill Energy, enchanting Mazzy, which gives the enchanted creature haste and allows him to pay 0 mana to untap the enchanted creature. He can only do this on his turn and only once per turn. He sends Mazzy at Ashley, triggering Brina. He'll pay 0 and untap Mazzy before passing a turn. Will plays a swamp, and then he'll move to combat and send Brina at Ashley. Again, triggering Brina, so he'll draw a card and Ashley's gonna be forced to take 11 damage in the air. Will passes it to me from there. I'll start my turn by attempting to equip Resurrection Orb to my Necron Deathmark. Will responds to me targeting my Deathmark by casting Volcanic Offering. He chooses to destroy Ashley's Castle Ardenvale. Then Ashley destroys Fate's Sunpetal Grove. The 7 damage is targeting my Death Mark, and I'll respond to that by sacrificing it to my Chronomancer's ability to draw myself a card. This triggers Elenda, and Ash puts a counter on her. From there, I'll choose to send 7 damage to the Maverick Fane Dusk Apostle on Ashley's side of the board. After that chain of events, I'll cast Liliana, Heretical Healer, which is a lifelinking creature that whenever another non-token creature I control dies, I get to exile Liliana and return her to the battlefield transformed, and I get to create a 2/2 black zombie creature, which I always forget to do. I'll pass it over to Ashley from there. Ashley starts her turn with an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, making every land a swamp in addition to their other types. Then she casts Krav the Unredeemed, which lets her pay 1 black to sacrifice X creatures. Target player draws X cards and gains X life, and Krav gets X +1/+1 counters. She gives the turn to Fate after that. Fate starts by putting a Jungle Shrine into play tapped. He'll pay a green and white to cast Jakai Naturalist, making his enchantments cost 1 less to cast. From there, he'll cast a discounted Nature's Embrace targeting his forest, allowing it to tap for 2 mana of any 1 color. Then he'll pass the turn over to Will. Will moves straight to combat and sends Brina at me, and triggering Brina since my life is the highest. Brina gets 2 more counters, and so I'll take 13 damage, and Will draws a card. He'll move to his end step and pass the turn to me after discarding. Now I'm going to play another Swampy Swamp. Then, after taking a crap load of damage last turn, I'm going to go ahead and cast myself a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, also known as Gary. When it ETBs, each opponent loses X life and I gain X life, where X is my devotion to black. Right now, my devotion to black is 7. Now I like that play so much, I'm gonna go ahead and pay 4 to equip Resurrection Orb on the Gary in the hopes of pulling that off again in the future. I'll go to my end step and pass the turn to Ashley. Ashley starts her turn by moving straight into combat and sends her 5/5 Elenda over to Fate. This triggers Brina, so Carter will get a counter and Ashley draws herself a card. Fate takes the damage. After that, Ashley pays into Krav's ability to sacrifice Elenda and Krav to draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. That'll put 2 counters on Krav, but since he's getting sacrificed anyway, the counters don't matter. When Elenda dies, she'll make 6 1/1 bodies, and immediately Ashley casts Living Death, forcing us all to sacrifice our creatures and putting all of our creatures in our graveyard onto the battlefield. In response to that, Will casts Supernatural Stamina, targeting Brina, giving her +2/+0, and more importantly, when she dies, return her to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Living Death resolves, and we're left with a Technomancer and a Necron Deathmark on my field, Elenda, Krav, Maverick, and Viscera Seer on Ashley's board, an Aki Battle Squad, which whenever 1 or more modified creatures Fate controls attacks, he gets to untap all his modified creatures and take an additional combat phase once per turn. Lastly, Will is going to have his Brina. Then we have triggers on triggers. My Necron Deathmark will enter and destroy Will's Brina. When my Technomancer ETBs, I'll mill 3 cards and get to return any number of artifact creature cards with total mana value 6 or less from my graveyard to the battlefield. I choose Liliana, Heretical Healer, and Chronomancer. Then Ashley moves to her end step, triggering Resurrection Orb to return my Gary from the graveyard, dealing 9 damage to everyone and gaining me 27 life. Fate starts by playing a Plains. Then he'll cast Sanctum Weaver, which lets him tap for X mana of any color, with X being how many enchantments he controls. Then he'll cast Faith Unbroken, targeting his Aki Battle Squad. Faith Unbroken exiles target creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield, and it gives the enchanted creature +2/+2. He targets Liliana on my side of the field to exile, and then he'll pass the turn over to Will. Will plays the Plains, and then he'll cast Hallowed Burial to put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. That's a really good board wipe when playing against 2 graveyard decks. My Liliana will come out of exile and he'll pass the turn my way. I'll start my turn by casting Foundry Inspector, making all of my artifacts cost 1 less. Then I'll cast Canoptic Tomb Sentinel, which exiles a non-land permanent when it ETBs from the graveyard, so right now it does nothing. Then I'll cast Plasmancer. It's a flyer, and when it ETBs I can search my library for a basic land to my hand. I'll also cast Triarch Praetorian. It's another unearthed card with a graveyard ETB trigger that allows me to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, but right now it does nothing. I'll fetch my swamp to my hand and play it as my land drop this turn. I move to combat and I send 2 lifelinking Liliana damage at will before passing the turn. Ashley plays a Castle Lothwain, then she'll cast God Eternal Oketra. It has double strike, and whenever she casts a creature spell, she gets to create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with Vigi. Also, when it dies or is exiled, she can choose to put it into her library 3rd from the top. After that, she'll cast Cruel Celebrant, triggering Oketra and creating a 4/4 Zombro before passing it to Fate. Fate is going to cast Trace of Abundance, targeting his land, giving it Shroud, and allowing it to tap for an additional mana of any color. From there, he recasts his commander, Mazzy, and passes it over to Will. Will starts by casting Noble Heritage, giving his commander the ability, when this creature enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does, he gains protection from that player until his next turn. After that, he'll cast his commander, Queen Marchesa. She has Death Touch and Haste, as well as giving him the Monarch when she comes into play. At the beginning of his upkeep, if an opponent is the Monarch, he gets to create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch and Haste. He'll play Evolving Wilds and then remember the Noble Heritage static text. He puts counters on his commander, and so does Fate. Me and Ashley decline. Will sacks the Evolving Wilds, searching for a mountain, and then he'll pass his turn to me after drawing because he is the Monarch. I cast Scavenged Brawler. It's an artifact creature with flying, vigilance, trample, and lifelink. For 5 mana, when it's in my graveyard, I can exile it to give target creature the keywords that he has plus 4 +1/+1 counters. After that, I bring my commander back out. Imotekh, welcome to the stage. I move to combat and swing 11 damage at will, which he's forced to take. I'll draw for the Monarch and pass the turn. Ashley plays a swamp and then she'll cast Drana, the Last Blood Chief, which has flying, and whenever they attack, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in Ashley's graveyard. She returns that card to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. That cast triggers Oketra and makes another zombie. After that, she'll cast Athreos, God of Passage. It has Indestructible and isn't a creature unless her devotion to white and black is less than 7, which it is. Whenever another creature she owns die, she can return it to her hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. That cast is going to trigger Oketra as well, so she'll make another token. She moves to combat and sends her 4/4 zombie at me along with her Oketra. I'll choose to block with my Scavenged Brawler. We all lose 1 life and she'll gain 1 life thanks to Cruel Celebrant. This triggers my Liliana, so I'll transform her into Liliana Defiant Necromancer. She'll pass the turn to Fate from there. Fate plays a Branch Loft Pathway, then he casts Soul Tithe to enchant my commander. At the beginning of my upkeep, I have to sacrifice my commander unless I pay X, where X is its mana value. Then he'll equip his commander with Ancestral Mask, giving it +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. Then he'll cast Sage's Revelry on his commander, which draws him a card for each aura he controls attached to a creature, and giving his commander +1/+1 for each aura he controls attached to a creature. On attack, his commander is a 22/22 with Trample. He sends it my way. I block with my commander and take 19 trample commander damage. The aura that was on my pancake of a commander is put into exile thanks to Mazzy's ability, and Fate can cast it until his next turn. He'll pass turn of Will from there. Will starts with the Noble Hierarch ability to put 2 counters on his commander. Me and Ashley decline the offer and Fate accepts. Then Fate remembers to draw for being Monarch and Will makes an assassin. Then he'll play a mountain and move to combat. He sends a 7 power Marchesa at me and a 1/1 assassin at Fate. I block it with my Foundry Inspector and he becomes the Monarch. He'll draw for the Monarch and pass the turn over to me. I start my turn by casting Bolas' Citadel. It allows me to look at and play the top card of my library by paying life equal to the card's mana value. I can also tap it and sack 10 non-land permanents and make each opponent lose 10 life. Then I uptick Liliana, making everyone discard a card. I'll pay 5 life to cast Royal Warden. On ETB, it creates 2 2/2 Necron Warriors. I pay another 5 life to cast Treyarch Stalker, allowing me to, at the beginning of combat on my turn, choose an opponent and give all creatures menace that's attacking that opponent. I play a Swamp as my land for turn. I pay 5 mana to exile Scavenge Brawler from my graveyard and give my Canoptic Tomb Sentinel keyword soup +4 +1/+1 counters. I move to combat and send enough damage at everyone to put their life totals to below 10 for Bolas' Citadel ability to win a game, but Will responds to my attack with Settle the Wreckage to exile all attacking creatures I control. Because I put all my eggs in one basket, I tap Bolas' Citadel to sack most of my board and deal 10 damage to each opponent. I say farewell to my board and sadly pass the turn to Ashley. Ashley casts Hagra Mauling, targeting my only remaining creature and destroying it. She swings the team at me, and on attack, the Blood Chief triggers to return Skemfar Shadow Sage from the graveyard with a +1/+1 counter, and when it enters the battlefield, she chooses to gain X life, where X is the greatest number of creatures she controls that have a creature type in common. She chooses Zombie and gains 3 life. I'll take 23 damage. Ashley then activates Castle Lothwain to draw a card and lose a life, having only 1 card in hand before passing the turn to Will. Will starts with his Noble Hierarch trigger and Ashley takes the counters this time around. He'll play a Fetid Heath, then he moves to combat and sends his 9 power commander at me. I take the damage, and then he'll cast Shadrix's Silverquill. At the beginning of combat, he can choose 2, but each mode has to target a different player. Give someone an Inkling, have someone draw a card and lose a life, and have someone put +1/+1 counters on each creature they control. He draws for the Monarch and passes the turn to me. I'm going to play a Swamp and then unearth my Canoptic Tomb Sentinel, choosing to exile Ashley's Drana. Then I'll pay 5 life to cast Canoptic Spider, so whenever another non-token artifact creature or vehicle enters the battlefield under my control, I draw a card. Then I'll pay 2 life to cast Chronomancer again. I'll move to combat and send my Canoptic Tomb Sentinel at Ashley. She'll block it with a zombie. The zombie dies, triggering Cruel Celebrant and dealing 1 damage to each opponent, and she gains 1 life. With the writing on the wall, I'll pass the turn over to Ashley. She'll cast Blood Artist, making another zombie, and then she'll cast Woestrider. It's a sack outlet that enters with a goat. She'll sack the goat and drain me out of the game. And Ashley's gonna take the game this time around. That's gonna wrap up the game. Hopefully you all enjoyed the gameplay. If you did, don't forget to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're still growing. Like the video, let me know, and drop a comment. Let me know how many misplays we had, and let me know generally which commander you thought was your favorite. Until next time, I'll see you all at the table.